Sirens stitched blue across the wet brick as two uniforms shouldered past me, rain snapping off their jackets like tiny glass. The smell was bleach and stormwater, and something metallic under it that my brain didn't want to name. Tenants clustered beneath the overhang, hoods up, phones out, our reflections jittering the black window like a crowd that didn't want to be itself. "Which unit?" I asked our super, Vic, thick wrists, keys like a medieval necklace. He shook his head. "Not a unit," he said. "Maintenance closet behind the laundry." Not a unit. But the medics wheeled out a zipped bag that had the posture of a person who would never again stand up for themselves. Someone had called it in after a smell on the third floor. Someone else, me, had emailed about that smell last week and then apologized, like I had embarrassed the building by noticing. "Do we know who?" I asked. Vic's mouth did a twitch that didn't qualify as a no. "Neighbor," he said, "long-term, kept to himself." "Which neighbor?" I pushed. He didn't answer. The elevator doors yawned open and swallowed the stretcher, and for a second the fluorescent ceiling made the zipper flash like a fish scale. We watched it vanish, everyone pretending we didn't count floor numbers by instinct. I'm good at numbers. Project coordinator, urban design nonprofit, professional herder of chaos. I live in 3B. I know the 10 units on my floor. I know the cat in 3A, the incense in 3C, the couple in 3D who fight like they're auditioning for a play no one wants to see. There was no secret neighbor on 3. Rain thickened, tapping a metal handrail with anxious fingers. I tasted pennies. When the doors opened again, the stretcher came back down empty. "Go inside," a cop said, polite like a warning. "We'll be knocking." I went up. The elevator smelled like lemon cleaner fighting a losing battle. The maintenance door by the laundry wore a new lock, shiny, mean. The hall was too quiet. No dryer studding, no radio from 2F, just the soft electric hum buildings make when they're deciding whether to tell the truth. On my doormat there was an envelope slick with rain. No stamp. My name in a neat block print I didn't recognize. I slid my thumb under the flap and felt the paper raise a little, like skin bristling. Inside, one photocopy. A page from our tenant roster. A name I'd never seen. Martin Gray, Unit 3.5. I looked up at my ceiling like I could see the half. 3.5, I said out loud, and the hallway swallowed the fraction like a secret it had been saving. If someone had lived above me without existing on any list I'd ever seen, who else knew he was there? And why was the first proof of him, of us, in my hands?
I'm Lena Park, 29. Seattle fits me. Rain to smooth the edges, hills to keep you honest. My job is triage for good intentions. Grant timelines, community listening sessions, the maps we draw to ask concrete to be kinder. The building is a 1920s brick on Capitol Hill, renovated enough to charge more than it should, old enough to creak when the weather changes. My windows sweat in November, my radiator sighs when it starts up, like an old dog settling. 2 things matter to this story. First, I know our systems. I pushed Vic to share a digital tenant list so we'd stop forgetting packages for 4C. I built a shared spreadsheet to track laundry machine outages after an elderly neighbor slipped on suds. I run. I time splits. I notice patterns because patterns tell you what's about to hurt you. Second, I don't like being dismissed. A year ago, I flagged a loose step on the north stairwell. Vic called me thorough in a way that meant annoying. When I emailed the owner, Alder Properties, they thanked me, CC'd Vic, and then nothing changed for 2 months, until a donor to my nonprofit copied our director on my follow-up, and the step was fixed that afternoon. I learned 2 lessons. Paper trails are leverage, flattery is a hammer. 3 weeks ago, the building changed. More light under the maintenance door at odd hours, a thrum at 3:17 a.m. like a small generator, the smell of coffee where coffee didn't belong. I emailed Vic. He said, "We replaced a blower fan." I asked which vendor. He said, "You on the board now?" I forwarded that to Alder. They wrote, "Thanks for your care," and attached a flyer about composting. Then, packages started misrouting. A sheet set addressed to M. Gray ended up in our lobby with a sticky note that said, "Wrong building," in someone's tidy hand. I looked through the list I'd curated. No Gray. No Martin. That same week, someone left a handwritten note on the corkboard. "Whoever keeps slamming the laundry room door at 1 a.m., please stop. Some of us sleep." It was unsigned, printed in those neat blocks again, the kind you see on lost cat posters that end with a heart. I thought about tearing it down and carrying it to Vic. Instead, I stuck a fresh pushpin through the corner and looked at the doorway to the maintenance hall. It smelled faintly of fresh paint, which in old buildings means someone wants you not to look at the wall. That was before the sirens, before the bag, before the roster page that said 3.5, as if we'd always lived in a math problem. If there was a neighbor we never acknowledged, who decided he didn't count? And what had he written that needed me to read it? Inside my apartment, rain ticked the window like a metronome kept by a nervous student. The paper from the envelope smelled faintly of toner and citrus cleaner. I held it under the lamp and ran my finger down the roster, past the names I knew. 3B, Park. 3C, Ortiz/Ortiz. 3D, Patel/Fong. 3.5, Gray. No email, no phone, just a typed name placed like a dare. A knock. Not polite. Cop knock. I opened. Detective, mid-40s, rain on his shoulders, tie loosened into a suggestion. "Miss Park? Detective Rios. You live directly below the service mezzanine." "The what?" "The old dumbwaiter landing, between floors." He clocked the paper in my hand, the way cops' eyes do math. "May I?" I passed it. He didn't flinch. "Who gave you this?" he asked. "It was on my mat," I said. "No envelope." "Someone slid it." "The hallway camera," I started. "Hasn't worked for 6 months. Your super told us it's on order." "Of course," I said, the taste of rust back. He handed the page back with a crispness that made me like him. He said, "We found a man in the service closet above your unit. ID says Martin Gray. Legally, he doesn't exist in this building. He has mail from here anyway." "How long?" I asked. Rios's jaw tightened. "Judging by rent receipts we found, a year." "Receipts?" "In a ledger," he said. "Cash. Signatures that look like his. No property ledger entries to match. Someone was collecting off the books." "Vic," I said before I had time to press my lips together. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. "Did you know him?" "No." The word felt insufficient. "But I knew someone was awake at 3:17. Rios glanced at my ceiling. "We'll be back tomorrow with more questions. If anything else appears on your doormat, call me." He tapped his card to my phone. His name appeared like a dare. "Don't go down any doors you don't have keys for." When he left, the hallway smelled like wet wool and something wrong. I put the roster copy on the table and texted my friend Renee 2 buildings over. "Cops found a body above me." She called. I didn't pick up. I didn't want to say it out loud. Saying makes things heavy. I made tea I didn't drink and sat with the paper until the letters blurred. At 11:40, the radiator pinged, the building settling after being questioned. I told myself to sleep. At 12:03, I heard 3 soft taps above me, measured and careful like someone testing a wall with their knuckle. I stared at the ceiling. "You can't be there," I whispered. "You're already gone." But the taps came again, and then a second envelope slid under my door and kissed the rug like a snake. If the dead don't write letters, who did? And why did the ink smell fresh?
The second envelope was unaddressed, no flap glue, just folded. Inside, a hand-drawn map of our 3rd floor, My unit shaded, the service corridor penciled in like a banned word. A box between floors labeled 3.5. An arrow to a small hatch above the laundry with "Quiet" underlined twice. There was also a post-it, the neat block print unmistakable. If you're reading this, they found me. Please do not call Vic. If you want the truth, use the hatch. Bring light. Close quietly. Every survival instinct I owned tried to unionize and strike, but the note didn't smell like threat. It smelled like copier paper and the weird lemon cleaner Vic uses when he's pretending something just got fixed. I pulled on my rain jacket, tucked my flashlight in the pocket, and stepped into the hallway where the carpet has that wool and old coffee smell every building like mine carries like a family recipe. Down by laundry, the new padlock on the maintenance door glared. Above the dryer vents, a square metal hatch sat a foot above my reach. Paint newer than the wall around it, 4 screws that someone with patience had backed off a quarter turn each. I dragged over the rolling hamper, stepped up, and pressed. The hatch lifted with a sigh. Warm, stale air breathed out. Cardboard, dust, instant coffee, something like cedar. I flicked the flashlight. The beam found a crawl space big enough for a careful person to call a room. Low ceiling, plywood floor, a sleeping bag neatly rolled, a folding table with a lined notebook, a cheap printer, and a box of cash receipts bound by rubber bands, a mug with a brown ring, a stack of our building memos, rent increases, friendly reminders about noise, annotated in the same precise block letters. Increase illegal per city code, retaliatory notice to 2E, track dates. Ask Miss Park in 3B. She saves receipts. He wrote my name like I was a tool he planned to use carefully, not a person he was afraid of. On the back wall, a pinned map of the building with red thread to apartments, 3D, 2E, 4A, each tagged with dates. Names, Ortiz, Nguyen, Cho. Beside each, amounts, lower than my rent by half. A ledger lay open, neat columns, cash from M. Gray to V. Castellano, Vic. Monthly notes, signatures, one that matched a stack of delivery slips tucked beneath. Thanks, Vic, scrawled with the tired gratitude of someone in hiding. Under the table, a shoebox of Polaroids. Not creepy, documentary. Peeling paint with a date stamp, broken latch, mold bloom behind a washer. On each, a note in block print. Reported on 5/3, ignored. Mrs. Lawson fell here 6/10. Photo sent to Alder, no reply. He'd been cataloging neglect, and he'd been paying for the privilege of being hidden by the man who should have been fixing it. At the bottom of the notebook, a half-finished letter addressed to me. Lena, you're the only one who emails and doesn't stop when they patronize you. If this gets to you, I lost the race. In the ledger, you'll find enough to make the city listen. In the duct by the east wall, there's a drive. If no one has found it, take it and go to the Department of Construction and Inspections, 4th and Cherry. Ask for Investigator May Allen. Tell her I said hello and that I'm sorry. I palmed the duct grate. 2 screws were already a quarter turn loose. The drive slid into my hand like a secret agreeing to be told. It was warm from proximity to a life. I backed out, slid the hatch shut with my fingertips, heart tripping, palms dusty and smelling like sheet metal. In the hallway, the building breathed like nothing had happened. Upstairs, someone laughed, the kind of late-night laugh people have when they think they're alone with their joy. Back in my apartment, I thumped the ledger onto my table, and the sound carried the authority of math. Simone in 2E, cash discount for late repairs. Mrs. Lawson, courtesy adjustment with no adjustment. My grant brain recognized patterns. Off-book income, illegal occupancy, retaliatory neglect. I plugged the drive into my laptop. Files bloomed. Timestamp recordings, emails forwarded, photos stamped with city code citations. A folder named Alder held an email thread where Vic CC'd the owner on my stairwell complaint, and the owner wrote back, "Tell Miss Park we appreciate her vigilance. No action." Vic had forwarded back to Martin with, "She won't stop. Might be useful." Useful. I stared at the screen until the letters swam. A slow knock came at my door. 3 polite taps that assumed they would be answered. "Miss Park?" Vic's voice. "You all right?" His keys rattled like a bag of coins. I closed the laptop, slid the drive into my pocket, and answered with my face neutral. He peered at my hands, the table, the vacuum lines in the carpet. He smelled like rain and the lemon cleaner I've come to hate. "Sorry about the commotion," he said. "Rough night. You hear anything? Smell anything?" "Just bleach," I said, and held his gaze. He nodded too fast. "Detective said he'd be back. Hey, if anyone asks, don't mention storage spaces, yeah? You never know who's supposed to be where in a building this old." "I know where I'm supposed to be," I said. He smiled a smile that didn't wrinkle his eyes. "That's the spirit." When he left, I put my ear to the door. His footsteps paused outside the laundry. Keys. A tiny scratch of metal on metal. The maintenance door clicked again. I texted the number on Rios's card. "I have something from the mezzanine. Not safe to hold. Tomorrow?" The typing bubble appeared, dissolved, then 8:30 a.m. lobby. Don't share. Don't sleep by the laundry room. If Martin had tried to hand me his life and failed, what would the person who profited from it try to take back before morning? And what would I choose to risk to make sure he didn't get it?
I woke to the smell of coffee I didn't make and the unmistakable hush of a door that closes with care. The clock said 7:55. The bolt I'd triple-checked was still thrown. The air moved wrong. I pulled on a hoodie and stepped into the living room. On my table, a mug, steaming, clean ceramic that wasn't mine. Beside it, a folded note in the neat block print. "Don't talk to the police yet. They will take it and lose it. Give it to me. I'll get it to the city the right way. M." My stomach dropped. M. Martin! But he was gone. The mug smelled like the cheap dark roast downstairs and a thread of cedar like the crawl space. Outside, the hallway was quiet. My peepholes showed no one. The deadbolt had held. The chain had held. Somehow the mug was in my apartment. I checked the windows. Locked. The bedroom closet. Empty. The bathroom. The shower curtain hung obediently open. My heart thudded like a bad drummer trying to keep up. The note's paper matched last night's map. The ink looked fresh, wet enough to smudge if I tried. I didn't. I texted Rios. New development. Possible impersonation. He replied, "Lobby now. Bring nothing visible." The elevator groaned like an old animal and delivered me to 2 cops and Rios, who took one look at my face and ushered me aside. I told him about the mug, the note, the warm smell. He didn't write it down. He said, "Don't go back upstairs. We're going to sweep." I said, "Do you think he—" "Martin is deceased," he said evenly. "Autopsy confirms. This is someone using his name." "Vic?" I said. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe someone else who knew Martin was there." He put out his hand. I put the flash drive in it. The relief was a physical thing, like setting down a box you've been pretending isn't heavy. He palmed it easily, a cop who knows when to pocket and when to sign. He said, "If anyone asks you for anything, you don't have it. You never had it." "Understood." "And Miss Park?" "Yeah?" "Do you keep copies?" I swallowed. No, I lied, and he accepted the lie because it was useful. By noon, half the building had learned the phrase illegal occupancy and started saying it like a curse we hoped would protect us. A rumor bloomed that Martin was a squatter, another that he was a ghost, a third that he was a city inspector embedded to catch Vic. None were as interesting as the ledger in my cabinet and the receipts in my head. At 3:17 p.m., I checked. I heard the thrum from above again, an electrical pulse like a small machine doing work for someone who didn't deserve it. I stood on my couch and pressed my ear to the plaster. It vibrated faintly, like a cat purring after a long night. Martin was dead, but his setup wasn't. If someone wanted me to hand them the only clean copy, who was running the machine now? And why did the noise sound like a timer I couldn't read?
At 10:22 p.m., the laundry room was empty, the hum of dryers replaced by the whisper of vents. I listened. The thrum above pressed into my skull. I rolled the hamper under the hatch, climbed and eased it up. Warm air sighed. The crawl space lay in the flashlight like a stage no one clapped for. Something had changed. The ledger was gone. The pinned map remained. The Polaroids remained. The sleeping bag sat a little closer to the wall as if someone had dragged it by one careful corner. On the table, a new post-it in block print. Don't. Too late, I whispered. The duct where I found the drive now held a tiny Wi-Fi router, green light winking. A cable ran along the wall to a laptop tucked under the table. Screen folded. I slid it out with 2 fingers. The air smelled like warm plastic and dust. I didn't open it. Not yet. Footsteps in the hall, the cadence of someone who knows exactly where they're going. The maintenance door lock clicked quietly, a sound like a mechanic forgiving a mistake. I killed the flashlight and pressed myself into the shadow under the table, wood biting my shoulder blades, breaths small. The hatch lifted without sound. A boot sole appeared, then another. The smell hit first, cigarettes and the ghost of bleach. Vic. He moved with someone else, lighter, careful, whispering. The other voice I knew from late-night arguments in 3D, Fong, the one with the lawyer tone he uses even when he's losing. Get the rest, Vic muttered. Cops took a drive this morning. I need the notebook in the cash stack. It's not here, Fong said low. Someone moved it. Miss Park, Vic sneered. Nosy. Fong's flashlight scraped light across the plywood. She'll talk. Then we make her unreliable. Anonymous complaints from the neighbors, noise, trash, violation of leased pets. She doesn't have a pet. Then she does now, Vic said. Everyone has something to be blamed for if you squint. He crouched. The table shifted above me, wood groaning like it wanted to betray me. His knee brushed my jacket. I held still and tasted copper. He reached under, hand sliding an inch from my hip and pulled out the laptop. At least this, he said. We wipe. Keep the router on, Fong said. If the city pulled IPs, we want them to pull ours after we clean. Make him look like the hacker. Him's dead, Vic said flatly. There was a silence that had shape to it, like a fist pressed against the door. Fong said, we did what we had to, and the way the sentence bent made bile climb my throat. They backed out, the hatch settled, the lock clicked. I waited 100 breaths, then 200, until my knees hurt with a pain that felt like permission to move. I slid out, turned my flashlight on, and scanned for anything I could take that mattered and that they hadn't seen. Under the sleeping bag, a library card with Martin Gray printed on it. On the back, a phone number in pencil, fading. I took a photo and tucked the card in my bra without thinking why that felt right. I climbed down into the laundry's fluorescent honesty and listened to the building breathe. It felt nervous and guilty and older than it had a right to be. In my apartment, I dialed the pencil number. It rang 4 times and turned into a voicemail whose first word made my ribs hurt. This is May. I didn't leave a message. I texted Rios. Vic and Fong just removed a laptop from the mezzanine with 3D. I was there. Router still on, likely wiping. I have a number that connects to May. He replied instantly, stay put, back up en route, do not open your door. I slid the chain and sat with my back to it. My shoulder smelled like plywood and fear. At 11:38 p.m., someone jiggled the handle gently, an inquiry from a man who wants to believe doors open for him. The chain sang, the handle did still. If Vic and Fong called what they did what we had to, what would they call what I was about to do? And how much louder would I have to be than a locked door to make any of it matter?
I didn't wait for Rios's backup. I left at dawn, hoodie up, drive copy in my pocket. Yes, I'd made one. No, I wasn't done being useful. Ledger photos on my phone. Martin's library card under my collarbone like a small, hard truth. The Department of Construction and Inspection's lobby smelled like old paperwork and new coffee. The security guard eyed my bag like he was grading it. Appointment? I was told to ask for Investigator Mallory Allen, I said. and the name did something to the air. He picked up the phone without question. Minutes later, a woman in her 50s with a braid like a rope and eyes that took inventory opened a side door. "Miss Park," she said, as if we'd already agreed about something important. We sat in a small room that pretended not to be an interrogation space by offering a plant. I put the copy drive on the table and the ledger photos beside it. "Martin Gray," she said, and I watched her work to keep her voice professional. "How did you know him?" I said. "He didn't," I said, "but he knew me. He thought I'd push." She nodded once like she'd predicted my answer. "He called me last spring, gave me 3 addresses where superintendents were subletting illegal spaces for cash. Yours was the 4th. He was scared. He wanted a warrant. I told him I'd need more. He said he'd get it, and then he stopped answering." "He's dead," I said. "I know," she said, and the no had weight. I heard the radio call. She plugged the drive into a city laptop, scrolled, whistled under her breath at a thread titled Alder Vic off book. She said, "This is clean. Timestamps, photos, city code citations. If your copies match what SPD has, we have enough to write orders, pull permits, and yank someone's job." "Pulled Vic," I said. "Maybe more than Vic," she said, tapping a forwarded email string where Alder thanked him for extra income streams. "I heard them say, 'We did what we had to,'" I said. "In the crawl space. I was under the table. They took his laptop to wipe." She didn't tell me I was reckless. She didn't have to. "SPD will handle criminal charges," she said. "We handle the building." Her phone buzzed. She glanced. "Detective Rios wants you out of your unit for a few days," she said. "We'll get you a voucher for a hotel." "I can stay with a friend," I said. "Better," she said. "And Miss Park, don't open your door to anyone who thinks you owe them politeness." I left with a number for victim services and a paper that said, "We take this seriously in bureaucrat." Outside, the wind off the sound slapped salt into my mouth. My phone buzzed. "Unknown. Stop giving my name to people who won't share. M." I stopped walking. "You're not Martin," I said to myself, out loud on Cherry Street like a person choosing not to be embarrassed. I texted back anyway. "Meet me, 3 p.m., Westlake Park, chess tables. Bring whatever you took last night, or I go public now." 3 dots. They vanished. 3 dots again. "Fine. Come alone." I went home, filled a backpack, left a note on my counter for myself that said, "No one gets in." I slid it under the kettle like a superstition that had earned the right to be believed. If the person wearing Martin's initials wanted to negotiate, what would they be willing to admit to in daylight? And could I stand there and not break something when they did?
The city moved around the chess tables like choreography. Tourists with umbrellas they didn't know how to use, teenagers performing their apathy like it paid, a man with a cello making Bach sound like apology. Coffee and rain and exhaust braided the air. He approached from my left, not my right, smart, wearing a navy rain jacket with the hood low. The jaw gave him away before the eyes. Fong. He sat opposite without greeting, the laptop in a messenger bag that looked too nice for a criminal. "I thought you'd bring Vic," I said. "He's not invited," Fong said, flat. Up close, he looked tired, the kind of tired that's a lifestyle. "He's messy, I'm not." "You put your voice on 'We did what we had to,'" I said. "You said it like a man who killed compassion in law school." He flinched. I filed it, surprised at himself. "We tried to get Martin out," he said. "He refused." "Out of the building he was paying cash to hide in? Under your landlord's off-book? Under Vic's lock?" Martin wanted case law. He wanted the perfect record. He said if he left, Vic would rent the space to the next person who couldn't afford a deposit. He said if he stayed, he could build something that ripped Alder open from the inside.
So you helped Vic threaten him, I asked. No, he said. I brought him food. I brought him a heater with a shutoff. I told him to stop documenting 3D because my wife's name is on our lease and I didn't want her dragged. Then why did you say we did what we had to? I said, and I didn't lower my voice. He stared at the chessboard, the rain pocking the black squares. A woman at the table next to us laughed at a text and then put her hand over her mouth like she'd let a bird out. Give me the laptop, I said. He slid the bag across. It was heavier than I wanted it to be. I wiped the drive, but he backed up to cloud folders. I couldn't crack those. Maybe your friend at the city can. Detective Rios has a copy of a drive Martin stashed, and I have another. And now I have this. You're late. He exhaled. I figured, he said. Turn on Vic. Right now, text me everything he sent you about me. Every plan to smear. He hesitated, one heartbeat too long. Then he pulled his phone, scrolled, forwarded. My phone lit. Screen caps of Vic texting Alder, Park is a problem, fix him. Alder replying, create plausible violations, document, initiate non-renewal. Vic texting Fong, if Park talks, I'll say she was the one in the mezzanine. Fong replying, she's not, don't. Come with me to May, right now. He shook his head. I have to get my wife first. If Vic gets wind, he changes the locks and tells Alder we're squatters. Then you have 2 hours. If you're not at 4th and Cherry by 5, I send your messages. He stood. He smelled like rain and guilt and the lemon cleaner we all used because the hardware store was across the street. You're ruthless, he said. I'm tired. When he left, the rain lightened. I texted Rios a single sentence and a pin. He replied, we're ahead of you. Keep moving. If villains come in paperwork and excuses, what do you call the person who lets the excuse use their mouth? And when his excuses started to look like my own, what did that make me?
By the time I got back, the building's lobby reeked of acrid, burnt plastic. Fire alarm? No. Just a smell that said electricity had gone somewhere it shouldn't. The lights in the hallway flickered like nervous eyelids. The maintenance door was half open. I heard voices, Vic, sharp, another man lower. I didn't recognize the second voice until my skin did. Alder, the property owner. I'd heard him at one tenant meeting 2 years ago. Smooth, bored, slipstream voice of a man who likes to be thanked. He smelled like aftershave that costs money and solves nothing. Pull the breaker, Alder said. If their routers dump, the city will say seize, and you'll say deny, and we'll file and be done. Cops already took a drive, Vic said. Park's got big friends. Park has a job that depends on us donating to her nonprofit. I know how this city works. I stood in the laundry room and let the anger lift my chin. Then I went downstairs to the basement breakers and flicked my phone's flashlight across labels that were a liar's dream. Handwritten, crossed out, wrong. One in the corner said, roof, mezz, in pencil. The metal was warm. Don't, a voice said behind me. I turned. Detective Rios stepped out of a dark and became law. We wanted them to throw it so we could see who told them to, he said. But since you're here, Miss Park, let's do it together. I said Vic and Alder are upstairs. May's got city backup on the curb. He said we just needed them to touch a wire. You've got a knack for timing. He lifted the panel cautiously, the smell bit sharper. Ozone, hot dust. He didn't throw the switch, he closed it. Change of plan, he said. Let's let them throw it and then meet them at the top. We climbed. My mouth tasted like pennies again, the adrenaline at a steady hum that made the hallway feel narrow. We passed Mrs. Lawson, eyes wide, teacup trembling, and I pushed 2 fingers onto her forearm and said, it's okay, with a confidence I borrowed from Rios. At the maintenance door, Alder had a hand on the panel, Vic, hovering like a kid who wants to be praised for pushing a button. May said, electrical work requires a licensed contractor from the doorway behind them, voice a clean blade. Alder pulled his hand back like the box had bit him. We were tampering, Rios said, stepping in. On a space you falsely leased. Step back. Vic raised his palms, a man who wants to perform cooperation. He said, "No one got hurt. It's just a breaker." I said, "Tell that to the man you found and moved." And the words made the room smaller. Silence. The building listened. Rios cuffed Vic with the bored competence of a man making an overdue correction. Alder put his hands out with grace like he wanted the cuffs to read as jewelry. May photographed the panel, the cords, the mezzanine hatch. Her flash was punctuation. "Miss Park," Rios said, "you want to lock your door and go not be a hero for 6 hours?" I said, "Can I watch from the landing?" He said, "No," and smiled the first real smile I'd seen on him. But I appreciate the instinct. As they led Vic past me, he looked at me with something that wasn't quite hate. He said, "You could have just minded your email." I said, "You could have minded your lease." He snorted, "Nobody minds leases." I said, "May does, and now so do I." If justice is just paperwork with teeth, I wanted to see it bite.
Alder posted a statement about rogue decisions by a superintendent and deep sorrow at the unexpected death of a person in our community. Marie posted a response about city code, illegal occupancy, and civil penalties with numbers large enough for men with aftershave to think about moving to Phoenix. The paper called Martin a hidden tenant. The comments called him a ghost. Neither got it right. Rios called me to say the coroner ruled natural causes, cardiac, and that the moving was a crime anyway. Fong and his wife turned up at Marie's office with a written statement and a box of Polaroids they'd hidden in their closet, and a willingness to take their lease to a different building. They didn't apologize to me. They didn't have to. They apologized to the right file. Marie gave me a copy of an order requiring Alder to fund repairs in our building under direct city supervision. The day the crew arrived, the hall smelled like fresh plaster and humility. The mezzanine hatch was sealed and painted and labeled "No Access" in a font that looked like it meant it. Mrs. Lawson taped a photo of a teacup on the corkboard that said, "For M, who kept the list when the rest of us only kept the receipts." Someone added a single white daisy in a mason jar whose water changed before it needed to. The jar never disappeared. Vic's name came off the mailboxes. The mail arrived in the right slots with the right names for the first time in months. A key showed up under my door in a plain envelope without ink. ROOF, stamped into brass. Marie texted a minute later. "Your building's roof deck is now open. Legally. I figured you could use the air." On the roof, the city smelled like wet cedar and baked tar and the distant fry oil of a restaurant that doesn't know it's oversalting. The sky lowered itself toward us like a friend who sits on the floor with you. I thought about Martin's careful block letters, about his ledger, about the sleeping bag rolled with care against a wall that didn't deserve it. I wrote his name on the back of an index card and tucked it into my wallet with my Orca card and the punch card for the coffee shop that doesn't charge extra for oat milk. Not a shrine, a reminder. If buildings are machines that sort people into categories, paying, complaining, invisible, then someone had jammed ours on purpose. We unjammed it enough to make a sound like a yes. Who would keep it from jamming again when the city got bored?
The city runs on mornings like this. Light rain, the smell of fur, the sound of bus brakes like long exhales. I ran my loop past the construction site where they finally fixed the broken sidewalk I tripped on last fall and wrote a very polite email about. My breath smelled like mint and effort. My calves burned, which is a kind of gratitude. I think about hidden people now when I pass utility doors, the way we all learn to look through each other because it's easier. Martin cataloged our neglect like it was his job, and we called him secret because it made us feel less guilty. He wasn't a ghost, he was a mirror. For a year, he organized our building better than Alder did. He wrote in block print because it doesn't wobble when your hand does. I phoned my mom and told her I was fine.
She told me she bought boots that squeaked and laughed at herself until I laughed too. I texted Renee and said, "Lemon bars?" And she replied, "Always." I printed the city order and stuck it behind my fridge magnet that says "fix is a verb," because petty decor is still decor. I emailed Mallory a photo of the sealed hatch and wrote, "Thank you. If you need someone to write a pamphlet for tenants about how to pester correctly, I'm available." She replied with a thumbs up emoji and then a second email that said, "Yes." I stood on the roof afterward and let the damp get in my hair and stay there. I tried to think of a prayer that didn't embarrass me. I settled for this: make me useful in the direction of repair. It fits under my tongue without hurting it. I went back inside and pressed my palm flat to the wall by the laundry. It was cool and still. Nothing hummed that shouldn't. If the building ever starts purring again, when it isn't supposed to, I know whose name to say out loud first, and whose number to text second.
They called him a roomer. I call him a neighbor. And every time a door in our building opens now, the air feels a little more like it belongs to all of us.